What's the funniest thing that happened on this trip?
There were a lot of funny things on this trip. Okay, let me start off with just one, okay? There's this kid at Y.W.A.M named Juan, and since his name was very similar to the word one, we kept on saying catchphrases like that, so like, you are the only one, or this is the only one thing I'm gonna do. So we kept on making jokes like that all night long and all throughout the week, and we kept on using his name over and over and over. Another funny thing was when we went on the car rides in the gray van, we went from the Y.W.A.M base to where we were going for our outreach that day. And every single trip that we went in the van, Mike, who was the driver and the leader of Y.W.A.M, he kept on yelling, "Dad? Dad, is that you?" Every single person that was like walking by on the sidewalk and stuff would just look at us like, what is he doing? What is he doing? So every single time we see Mike now, I'm going in a car, we would yell, "Dad, is that you?" And here was another funny thing that we did on this trip. Every time we went in the van, just like when Mike was yelling, "Dad, Dad," he would honk the horn on the van to like random cars, and on the interstate, he would just keep honking and honking and honking the horn, and he would keep yelling, "Dad," and it was the whole van rides, the trips that we had were so much fun. It didn't even seem like we were driving long, even though sometimes we drove for like 30 minutes. It didn't feel like it was 30 minutes because of all the fun that we were having. Those are just some funny things that we did on this trip. I'm sure there is so much more, but if I had to name three, I'm sure those three would be the top.
What were some of your favorite catchphrases or sayings from the trip?
One of the phrases that really stuck out to me from the trip was the phrase, "shame him." That's referring to Satan. You know, whenever you're down in the dumps, sad, depressed, angry, any negativity that may, overcome you, you have to remember that not only are you not glorifying God, but you're pleasing Satan. This is my favorite phrase because it's a great mentality to remember when you're trying not to please Satan. And pleasing Satan is obviously not something that I want to do, so I just have to have the mentality to shame him, to just overcome the negativity and whatever it is that I may be thinking about or going through. And examples of shaming Satan would be from reading your Bible, praying more, being kind to a stranger, and just exhibiting glory to God. You know, in addition to glorifying God, I'm going to proceed to stomping on Satan.
What was your favorite part about this trip?
My favorite part was lunch, obviously. No, I'm just joking. My favorite part was going into downtown Winter Gardens and learning the 7 spheres of society. The 7 spheres of society were government, media, economics, education, family, religion, and celebration. For each of them, we had to go to a place representing them, and we learned about them and prayed about them. My favorite sphere was media because it influences me and it influences everybody else. Everyone watches TV these days, from tablets, phones, video games, all that junk.
Least favorite part of the trip?
Well, overall it was a good trip, so I don't really have a least favorite. I guess if I had to choose one, my least favorite would definitely be waking up from 5 to 6 every morning, and then we'd usually get to bed late, and I usually get to sleep in, so that was terrible. But despite having to wake up early each morning, it was a great trip overall, and I'm so happy I was able to go. What was your favorite ministry and why?
Well, my favorite ministry was on Friday when we were doing the last outreach. It felt like it was a unique experience because even though we did the same kind of outreach the previous days, it felt different because of one person. And what I mean by that is me and Caleb, who was the Y.W.A.M that went with me when we went door to door, we went across and we found this lady when we were asking for prayer door to door. She came out and she was really surprised. This woman's name was Lynette. She was like really surprised that many Christians were out just doing this, because normally you would just see a bunch of Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons just going door to door and not Christians, and that's one thing that really surprised me. What I found was that it's really disheartening that not many Christians go door to door and really ask for prayer, because we're meant for going out and doing missions. We're meant for going out to pray for people. We're meant to be the ones to go out and spread the word, and I'm glad we got to do that with this woman. And funny enough, she was already a Christian. She was just happy and great that the next generation is getting up and standing up and doing something. Yeah, so it was really exciting to keep going door to door. I really enjoyed it, and the Y.W.A.M that was with us was definitely on fire for God, and we were great that we got to hear Lynette's story. She told us about her life, her recent born child, and things going on with her marriage and everything, that those have been fixed and healed. God's name, and that was just amazing to hear that. And I thought that was definitely something that just hit us right there.
Do you think that you were meant to go on the trip, and why?
Definitely, yes, because I believe that through all the outreaches we did in Orlando and downtown Winter Garden, that we made a huge impact on a bunch of just random people's lives. Like, for example, in Y.W.A.M, we went up to random people just sitting on benches, just walking, and most of the people were homeless. And we just prayed over so many people, and after that, they would just say we made their day. And it was so great to see the people so happy after we prayed for them and just so touched. Yes, I definitely think we were all meant to be on this trip, because if we had never went on this trip, we wouldn't have gotten so close with each other, and we wouldn't have made such a huge impact. So.
What are some things that you are going to do with what you learned, and or what are your commitments?
So while we were on the trip, we spent plenty of time with outreach and plenty of time in lessons, plenty of time in worship. All three of those things are things that we need to be doing excessively. One of our lessons was that evangelism is a lifetime commitment. It's not a one-time thing. Instead of waiting until next summer to do evangelism, waiting until next summer to do a missions trip, I mean, there's plenty of opportunities all over the place. We can go to neighborhoods around the Claremont area, and they're just as in need as the neighborhoods that we went to on the trip. The truth is, we can't afford to simply do ministry every summer. No, it needs to be an ongoing thing. The second lesson I want to take away from this is that we need to spend our daily devotionals with Christ. We need to make sure that we're spending time with God daily, praising Him, reading His Word, and getting our daily bread, as you could take it. The third thing I'd like to take from this trip is that worship is a very important thing that we need to be doing in our personal life. I mean, we had some amazing worship. Worship is a very important thing that I want to make sure that I spend a lot of time doing, because down there at Y.W.A.M we had some really spirit-filled worship, and it was a great time with God. It was a great time with our fellow believers. And another thing is prayer. There was some very, very, very powerful prayer that took place down there. We prayed for plenty of things, from injustices around the world to even healing Brett's eyes. So in summary, three commitments that I'd like to make are: number one, to spend time in daily devotionals; number two, to continue the lifestyle of evangelism that we started at Y.W.A.M; and number three, to have better worship and prayer time with the Lord.
What were some team building activities you did on the trip?
Well, on Tuesday we started off and we made our name. The name ended up being Jiggly Table Tigers. And the first thing we did right after that was we did this thing with a pole. We had this pole, and we had to set on all our fingers like this. We had to get it from like shoulder height to the ground without it falling over or rolling. And the next activity, there was this rope hanging from a tree, and there's these two lines, and we were on one side of the line. We had to find a way to get the rope to us and swing from one side of the bank to the other. And the bank was lava, so we couldn't step in it. And everyone in our group had to get to the other side. But the goal was to get medicine, which was this little water bottle that we had to cap off, so it was hard to swing across with it. And everyone had to get across to the other side. Of course, at the beginning of all of these, we did get frustrated for a while, and we couldn't do most of them, like swimming across the rope. As easy as it looked, it really wasn't. And eventually, we all decided to come together, and we came up with these ideas that seemed crazy but ended up working. We brought the team closer together, because instead of just going right for it, we sat there for a while and talked about it. We didn't finish it, but we got far.
What are some of the events that took place on this trip?
I'd say the biggest thing we learned was to learn to serve, okay? And so some of the activities that we took part in were Clean the World. That was our first one. We went there and we see all these shampoo bottles everywhere. And I mean, it's just like, it's mountains, it's boxes full, it's everything. So we get there, and our job was to sort through shampoo bottles, conditioner bottles that came from hotels in various areas that were donated. And we had to sort them into conditioner, shampoo. There was a slot for each one. So we spent about, I don't know, maybe 3 hours there. And by the end of the event, the host was telling us how many we did. And we ended up sorting through, our group and maybe, I don't know, 40 other people. We ended up sorting through 55,000 bottles total. And so that yielded 7,300 bars of soap for impoverished nations. So after we got done with Clean the World, we started with a prayer walk in downtown Winter Garden, where we got to take a whole bunch of different bottles of lemonade and just hand it out for free. and offer them if they'd like prayer or if they wanted to talk about Jesus or if they knew Jesus. So we started doing that. We got a lot of really good reaction. We got to meet a lot of people in our community, and I think it was a lot of fun for the group. It helped us to break out of our comfort zone, and so we broke out of our comfort zone, and each time we talked to someone, I felt it was a little bit easier each time. And I think the rest of the group could say the same. And I think it was the second or third day we were there, we went to a place called the Justice Village. That's what Y.W.A.M calls it. And basically they show us there that you can, anywhere in the world you are, you can live off the resources that you have. So they came up with a concept of a couple model homes that they would build at the Y.W.A.M campus and then bring overseas to where they're doing missions. They built 2 houses made out of sandbags and clay, and then coated it with clay. And they're completely earthquake-proof, tornado-proof, flood-proof. And on the side of the house, they had this really cool hydroponic system where they would grow plants. And so it was a self-sustaining house. You'd have water that came from the rain, I believe, into rocks where plants were grown out of, and it would go down a few layers and then finally back into a container filled with fish. A day later, I think we had what was called a world dinner, and it was very interesting because we had 10 people sitting at the table, and the Y.W.A.M staff was going to serve us dinner. So they gave us our plates or silverware, and they gave us our drinks, and then we were each given a little bit of rice, a little portion of rice about this big. Once we got the rice, the Y.W.A.M staff, they started walking over with spaghetti, meatballs, I don't know what else, just a bunch of really good food and rolls and all this cool stuff. So they brought that to 2 people, and those 2 people were the Westerners. Okay, the Americans or rich nations, because only 2 out of 10, I think it is, actually get nourished properly. So they gave everybody the small portion of rice, and then they gave 2 Westerners anything they wanted. And when I went to raise my hand to get some more rice or another roll or anything, they would just completely ignore me because we ignore the rest of the world as Westerners. Also, while on the trip, we had Kaylin Chess's birthday. She turned 14, and of course my birthday. I turned 27. I thank you. So that was basically what we did on our missions trip, and we enjoyed it. And I think coming out of it, there was a lot of Christ-like qualities that were shown amongst the group, and we want to do it again.
What's something that stood out to you all on this trip?
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend each day, but the one night that I was able to attend the worship and the session, something that stuck out to me were the amount of unreached people groups in the world. There are 6,900 people groups that are unreached, that have never heard about Jesus. And not only are there 6,900, but the average amount of people in each of those groups is 400,000. And to give you a picture, because that number is way too huge for us to understand, Mike took a scroll, had the 6,900 people groups on it, front and the back in size, like 10 font, and he unrolled it, and he said that it would actually take up an entire NBA basketball court. Those people have never heard Jesus, and so that analogy really stuck out to me. Another thing that stuck out was 20 seconds of bravery can change the world. And this is the idea that if each person took just 20 seconds to give of themselves in some way, that it would be world-changing. And who doesn't have 20 seconds? I think that this trip is really impactful on both young and old alike. Hopefully it challenged some of the youth to take that leap of faith, to just pray about God's leading, and perhaps they can be a missionary to one of those groups. And I think that just overall, we were able to take away the fact that everywhere, people need Jesus.